delivering the dish on nutrition one bite at a time. We are Food-ology Radio. Join us Tuesdays at noon for an exciting blend of nutrition expert panel discussions on the most hot-button food issues and trends of the day. Tune in to hear the facts on nutrition, receive dietary tips, have us answer your own personal food questions, and much more. That's Tuesdays at noon on 88.1 FM 22 West Radio.
Would you like to go anywhere in the world for just $22? You're in luck because 22 West Media is having a fundraiser that's more than a bake sale. From April 21st to May 25th, each donation of $22 you can give will enter you to win a trip for two anywhere in the world with Turkish Airlines. For full details, visit 22westmedia.com and click the 22 for 22 West banner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session of Food-ology Radio. We are on 22 West, and we've got a somewhat heavy show for you guys today, but we're hoping by the end of it we'll turn it around, make it a little bit happier. But our show today is on eating disorders.
Very important topic.
Yes, absolutely. But as always, we're going to begin the show with Nutrition in the News. But I forgot to introduce everybody. I'm Dylan.
Brittany. And Atifa.
And now on to Nutrition in the News. So I found a pretty fun article from Australia that had about a cohort of about 5,600 women aged 18 to 43, and they were looking at the relationship between eating fast food and infertility amongst these women that are trying to get pregnant. So they, for a little background, infertility is the inability to conceive after trying for over a year. So this study found that amongst that cohort, only 8% of the women in this study were unable to get pregnant. But when they were looking at the women that ate fast food 4 or more times a week, that number jumped up to 16%. Double. A twofold increase. And alongside that, the study also looked at the relationship between fruit eaters and not fruit eaters, and found that those women had that did not consume fruit had a 50% more likely. There were 50% more likely to be infertile. So that's about what that'd be 12% of those in the study. And they also put it in terms of time. And they found that women who ate fruit 3 more times a day became pregnant half a month sooner than women who ate fruit only a few times a month. So for those women out there that may be having some trouble, perhaps it might be the fast food or the lack of fruits. Who knows? Worth a shot.
Well, I think that's an interesting article because I feel that a lot of people don't see the connection necessarily between infertility and, food, actual fruit and vegetable consumption. So that's interesting. Moral of the story, eat more fruits and vegetables, less fast food.
Just in general, literally. So for my Nutrition in the News, I decided to hit our local newspaper instead of hitting the interweb this week. So here in the latest version of 22S Magazine, our newspaper, I found an article about HIV here in the city of Long Beach, and I was kind of surprised by it because they were saying how it's still such an issue and how it's still occurring so commonly, and for people between 18 and 30, we're like 5 times more likely to contract an STD. That's not just to rain on your guys' parade, but I just kind of wanted to pass some information along because they were saying here in Long Beach, I forget which part of Long Beach, but there's a specific area where it's the highest concentration of people with HIV in the state of California. Kind of eyebrow raising, a little bit alarming there. So basically what I wanted to pass on to you guys is we have a really awesome health center. They offer STD testing at very discounted prices. Sometimes it's free. Check them out if you think that you might be at risk for having an STD or contracting one. They have some really great tips, some really great tools you could use to assess that, because the article is actually saying the number one reason that people pass on STDs is they simply don't know they have one. They're not diagnosed. So if you think you might, or you kind of fall into that age group, just make sure to take care of yourself, practice wellness, and take advantage of some of the awesome things we have going on here on campus for our student health. Yeah, that's basically my nutrition in the news.
See, that's why I'm excited about today's show. Very valuable information. A little heavy, but valuable, you guys. So for my nutrition in the news, I got a chance to take a look at an article that just came out looking at studies that deal with teen mental health. So one thing that they were talking about, the main thing they were talking about, was that programs that are in relation to helping teens with mental health should be incorporating a nutrition plan. Now, the reason being, there are a number of studies that have been put out. So there was a study in 2013, and then actually there were a few others as well. But this particular study found that the risk of depression is 25 to 35% lower for those that eat a high diet in vegetables, fruits, grains, and fish. That's actually pretty significant, 25 to 35%. Well, there was also another study that found that it was an 80% higher risk of depression for those who ate a higher quality whole food diet. So that's really significant. So with that, they're saying, okay, well, if we're able to not only look at how do we psychologically help these teens, but also we should be incorporating a better diet in general. Now, the other interesting thing is it wasn't just about how they were eating. There were a number of other factors that are related to food that helped with their depression and mental state, whether it was anxiety, eating disorder, depression. This included gardening. So gardening made a significant difference in their overall mental state. And then also for teens, getting a chance to spend time in the kitchen. So it was found that the teens that were able to help out with cooking the food, help out with figuring out like where food came from with gardening, they had a significant better outcome when it comes to mental health. So for those that are parents out there, or those that work with teens, this is a really important area that's, emerging on the importance of food with mental health. So that is our Nutrition in the News for today, you guys. Thank you for joining us so far. We'll be back soon with some very important information on eating disorders. Stay tuned.
And in case you're feeling the pressure, it might be because it's finals week.
Finals.
Finals.
So good luck on finals.
See if you can spot this one. You've been running, hiding much too long. You know it's just your foolish mind. Hey, love, got me on my knees, baby, begging, darling, please, baby, darling, don't you ease my worry now. Like it, I fell in love with you. You turned my whole world upside down. Hey, love, got me on my knees, hey, love. Begging, darling, please, hey, love. Darling, won't you ease my world at night? Make the best of the situation before I finally go insane. Please don't say you'll never find me great. Tell me all my love today. Hey, love, got me on my knees, hey, love. Begging, darling, please, hey, love. Darling, won't you ease my world at night? Hey, love, got me on my knees, hey, love. Begging, darling, please, hey, love. Darling, won't you ease my world at night? Layla, got me on my knees, Layla. Begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my world at night? Layla, got me on my knees, Layla. Begging, darling, please, Layla. Darling, won't you ease my worried mind? Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Food-ology. We hope you enjoyed that break and our lovely version of the final song,
Oh, yes. How embarrassing.
final countdown. Hope you guys got a laugh out of that. So just getting back into this topic of eating disorders. We mentioned earlier that we kind of chose this topic because it is something that we see in our society. We see it with, people our age, 18 to 30. We're going to get into some statistics here in a minute about individual groups such as women, men, children, adolescents, that sort of thing. But yeah, we just wanted to welcome you back to the show, back on Food-ology on 22 West. So we're just going to get right into it. So here we're going to look at women with eating disorders, just to kind of break the ice, I guess, on this conversation. So according to nationaleatingdisorders.org, the largest demographic of people that suffer from eating disorders are straight, young, white females. So that's just, according to this study, that's where we see most eating disorders. So just getting into like the different categories, because there's not just one type of eating disorder, there's several. So anywhere from 0.5% to 3.7% of women suffer from anorexia nervosa. Just to kind of get into what that is, it's basically just when you extremely limit your calories. So this is the pretty traditional one where we see just women and men, we're going to get into that too, but just people not really eating necessarily.
Right, and just having that overall poor body image. The perfect
Yes, the
example is
very
all
thin.
those commercials where it shows that extremely frail, thin woman that is looking in a mirror, and what they see in the mirror is not reality.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's basically anorexia, what you see there. So that's about 0.5% of almost 4% of women, which, that's 1 out of 25 towards the upper end of that statistic. So also an estimated 4.2% or 1.1% of women have had bulimia nervosa. Now this is a slightly more, I would say, detrimental. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health professional, but just based on some of the things that I've seen in my textbooks and in documentaries, this is where someone eats, and then they regurgitate what they ate.
Mhm.
So this actually has just big side effects. It's something to look out for is the teeth thinning. So your teeth actually become very thin, brittle, chipped. They may fall out because of the acid. Our mouths aren't designed to have that much acid in our mouths after every meal, essentially. And it could also have effects on facial nerves. So we see people with numbness in their faces after ongoing years of bulimia, just because there's so much pressure there every time that they purge. So that's, again, pretty large statistics.
And to add on to what you were saying about how, we're not necessarily professionals in this and
Yes,
determining
exactly.
what might be worse than the other, but definitely if you just think about what bulimia versus anorexia entails, there's that limit of calories essentially, pretty much, because
Yes.
you're not actually waiting long enough to digest it, you're
Yes.
purging it. But then also you've got to think, so that would obviously lead to deficiencies in specific nutrients.
Absolutely.
And then also you got to think, like you said, with the stomach acid that's coming back up, that's going to do a lot of damage to your teeth as well as maybe your trachea as well.
Exactly. I think we actually just saw this in our nutrition assessment book, but the case where the person had large facial swelling because of the pressure, because of their glands, it can also cause problems with your facial glands, which is just it's not something good to have. Let's see, what else? We also see here that on the other side of the spectrum, around 3.5% of women have suffered from binge eating disorder. So binging is basically when you eat and then you vomit the food before your body can digest it. So women with anorexia are actually, this is scary, this is 12 times more likely to die than non-anorexic counterparts. So we realize that these statistics are, they're alarming, but once again, we're talking about a condition that it does plague a lot of people in our society. Dylan, I think you found some interesting information on men affected.
Right. So a lot of people, especially in media, limit anorexia, bulimia, all these eating disorder problems strictly with women. But while, it definitely needs to be researched a lot more, it does seem to be a lot more prevalent in women, but it does occur in men as well. And this article that we're talking about specifically says that men are often the least diagnosed population of people with eating disorders. And this could possibly be due to shame about admitting it, because of what it's wrongly assumed to be a eating disorder that usually only affects women, so as I said. And it's definitely something that needs more research, because just to look more into it, because I wouldn't say that, I obviously would not be saying that I have an eating disorder, but there's plenty of situations where just certain things cross your mind. For instance, I'm a mountain climber. So, and the gym that I go to, there's this one guy that just is very cocky, takes his shirt off, and he looks great, so blah 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 blah. And sure, it makes me feel like, what do I need to be doing more so to look like that? But I mean, sure, in a joking way, it might cross my mind to go, well, maybe I won't be eating lunch or dinner this afternoon. I don't know. But no, that never actually occurs. It's nothing that actually sticks with me.
Yeah. No,
But-
I get it.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we got to look into more for the men to see if really there is, if it's brain structure-wise, because of that more prevalent in women versus men. So that would be something that'd be very interesting to look
Definitely
into.
could be. One of the things we're going to get into a little bit later is talking about some of the influences of social media on this. So make sure you stay tuned for that, just because it's an interesting part of our society, and it's actually kind of changing how different groups of people develop eating disorders. So the next one I was looking into were children, and this just it surprised me. It made me sad because I'm a nanny. I take care of a lot of kids, take care of a lot of children under the age of like 12. So this next statistic kind of hit home for me. They were saying how hospitalizations, oh, that was hard to say, for eating disorders for children from ages 5 to 12 have increased about 120%, like specifically 119% from 1999 to 2006. So in 7 years, it doubled, basically doubled plus a little extra for specifically hospitalizations. I'm not really sure what the causes behind that are. Perhaps it's a more severe look at an eating disorder, or could be other factors. We're not really sure.
Well, we also got to think that this is an age where they're still growing very rapidly. So
5 to 12, exactly.
So any kind of deficiency in nutrients is going to be extremely detrimental to their health.
Definitely, you're definitely going to see that. So studies have shown that, this is interesting. So in this group of 5 to 12-year-olds, we see a 5-to-1 ratio of girls to boys who are diagnosed with specifically anorexia or bulimia. So from those ages, you have about 5 times more girls who are diagnosed, but still, it's interesting to look at. And then this is compared to 10-to-1 in adults. So after the age of 18 or so, you go from having 5 girls to every 1 boy with an eating. Okay, this is not like a general population. So for every 1 boy with an eating disorder, there are 5 girls. This is not to say 1 in every 5 children have an eating disorder.
Right.
Let's not get that confused. But then when you compare it to adults now, 1 man to every 10 women with an eating disorder. So it essentially doubles. I can't help but think that it has something to do with like our society's idea of body image. So when you're a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old girl, no one's really saying, hey, you should have that thigh gap, or hey, you should be able to see a few ribs, or anything like that. No one's really saying that. When you're a kid, people don't really want to see that. But when you turn 20 or so, like, women start seeing more of this pressure from like magazines and that sort of thing to look a certain way. At least as a 24-year-old, I have to think that might be where we see these, but again, not entirely sure about that. So getting into adolescence, the onset, so this is pretty much where we see the onset of a lot of anorexia. So this statistic here says the onset of anorexia nervosa is commonly found around the same time as puberty. So it's just interesting, I think we all went through that terribly awkward video where we had to learn about puberty in 6th grade. Oh Lord, we're not going to repeat that, but
We'll save you the trouble.
Yes, we're sure if you're listening to this, you've probably gotten past 6th grade. Maybe you're a 5th grader listening to this. If you are, hey, what's up? Again, probably the same idea. Your body starts to change when you're going through puberty, so there's more pressure to look a certain way.
Just a thought that just came to mind right now in
Certainly.
regards to kids and adolescence, and how shocking it is to find out that these sorts of problems are prevalent in people this young. The time frame here, specifically for children, saying from 1999 to 2006, and it's probably, I would
So
say,
much higher now.
so much
I'd
higher
imagine.
now. Okay. I wonder if that has anything to do with the competitive nature that a lot of parents have with their children nowadays.
Ooh, the mommy wars. That's a great point.
You know, whether it's soccer, the sports that they put them in, or I mean, even the
That's a great point.
very embarrassing shows of what are they called? The moms
Dance
that
moms?
throw their kids out there on the
Oh,
really
my
embarrassing TLC shows or whatever
oh
they
my
are.
gosh, yeah.
I really wonder if that has any long-term damage to kids as they age. You know,
I mean,
I'm assuming that sticks with them.
Certainly.
So
We're not entirely sure, but it would definitely be something to look into. I think one association I kind of make with eating disorders is stress. So, like, the more you see someone who's stressed, if it's like a rough family home or it's stressed to look a certain way or a busy schedule or this kind of stuff, that's kind of where we start to see eating disorders developing. It's like a coping mechanism. If that is something that you're struggling with, please stay tuned. We're definitely going to get you or anyone who's interested some options, some tools you could use if you feel you are struggling with this. On-campus tools too, they're free. So stay tuned. We're actually going to take a quick commercial break right now, but please stay tuned for our eating disorder show here on Food-ology Radio on 22 West.
and when we come back, we are going to be painting this in a much more positive light. So you may want to stick around for this.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.
As a college student on the campus of Cal State University Long Beach, I'm sure many of us have experienced the need for health services concerning sickness, injury, or vaccination. I know I have. One night I was playing basketball and I sprained my ankle pretty bad. The next morning I went over to our student health services to get my ankle checked out. I filled out the necessary paperwork and the student health services took care of me. The mission of student health services is to support students' physical and mental well-being through affordable quality health services and education. Student health services provide sensitive confidential healthcare services to a diverse campus community. The fees of the student health services are included in our tuition. For more detailed information concerning student health services, search csulb.edu/SHS.
Am I more than you bargained for yet? I've been dying to tell you anything you wanna hear, 'cause that's just who I am this week. Lie in the grass next to the mausoleum. I'm just a notch in your bedpost, but you're just a lot in a song. Drop a heart and break a name. We're saving and saving for the road team. We're going down, down, in and around, and sugar will going down swinging. I'll be your number one with a bullet. A loaded gun complex, can't get and pull it. We're going down, down, in and around, and sugar will going down swinging. I'll be your number one with a bullet. A loaded gun complex, can't get and pull it. Is this more than you bargained for yet? Oh, don't mind me, I'm watching YouTube from the closet, wishing to be the friction in your jeans. Isn't it messed up how I'm just dying to be him? I'm just a notch in your bedpost, but you're just a line in a song. Drop a heart and break a name. We're saving and saving for the wrong team. We're going down, down, in and around, and sugar will going down we're going down swinging. I'll be your number one with the bullet. A loaded gun, complex, cock it and pull it. We're going down, down, around. And sugar, we're going down swinging. I'll be your number one with the bullet. A loaded gun, complex, cock it and pull it. We're going down, down. Down, down. We're going down, down. Loaded gun, complex, cock it and pull it. We're going down, down, around. And sugar, we're going down swinging. I'll be your number one with the bullet. Loaded gun, complex, cock it and pull it.
Welcome back to Food-ology, guys, and our special show on eating disorders. So now we've covered quite a bit of the heavy stuff, and we're going to go more into some neutral ground and maybe even some positive aspects that we can be thinking about in possibly either detecting whether someone could have an eating disorder and what we could actually do about it.
Exactly, because there is so much we can do about it. That's the good news.
Okay, so to begin, we're going to look at some warning signs
Yes.
that we could possibly be on the lookout for if you happen to be on the fence of whether or not someone you know could potentially have an eating disorder, or if you're just completely not sure. So there's a wide range of things that you could look for, which include physical signs, maybe even some behaviors, or even verbal cues from your friends, family, whoever it is you happen to be looking up. And some physical signs that you could be searching for in people would obviously be dramatic weight loss. Could also be dramatic weight gain if we're talking about
Binging.
binge eating.
Yeah.
We are looking at possibly dressing up in tons of layers of clothing.
Yes.
This is a big one because it kind of covers two avenues of stuff that could be wrong. It could be, one, they're trying to hide their weight loss from people. This, I would assume, might be a little bit more in relation to people with bulimia, right? Because people with anorexia will typically think that they are...
It could go both ways. So typically for people with anorexia, what you do see is someone with a very frail body weight, or even in the earlier stages of it where there isn't as much calorie restriction or it hasn't been as long term, they will still have a fairly normal body weight, close to their normal, what was normal for them. But then as it goes on, they basically just perceive themselves inaccurately. So they would see a lot of body fat and when they look at themselves, but in reality they're very thin. So sometimes we do see a lot of layering with anorexia
Right.
as well.
And then the other avenue down when it comes to layering up with clothing could potentially even be if they are already extremely thin and frail, they're doing it to keep warm as well. So these are actually two very good indicators, physical indicators that we could be looking out for in someone that is severely malnourished and underweight because of these eating disorders. Now, when it comes to some verbal cues, there's a couple that just kind of jump out of the page, stick out, and it's a lot to do with comments about feeling fat or being fat and wanting to lose a ton of weight. But it's important to know that it's when that is coupled with someone that obviously is not overweight.
Yes.
So that is something that you should definitely look out for.
Yeah.
Maybe even some behaviors. A lot of these will happen out in public when you're at an outing with friends. They will show concerns about eating in public. They're trying to hide it from you, that they're...
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So this is, I just want to say, I did not research this recently. This is something I saw on a Dr. Phil show. So take this with a grain of salt, We just wanted to mention it, or I did. One of the practices that I saw was if you are eating with someone at a dinner table, maybe it's a date night or eating with a family, it's I'm using quotes here, pretend eating, basically. So they'll, tap their fork on the plate, they'll scoot their food around, they might take a bite of something, but as you kind of might notice, they're not actually eating it. They are like making food noises, tapping their plate, moving it around like you normally would when you're eating, or like talking to distract. And sometimes even with younger kids, they're just like shoving it in their sleeves. They're not even, they stuff it in their sleeve when no one's looking to avoid eating it. Just stuff to look out for. Or food in their rooms, private stores of food, like food in their mattress or in their closet. They're hoarding it. They're hoarding food, and they're eating it where no one else can see it. That's a very abnormal eating disorder or eating habit, basically.
Mm-hmm. And then further, more physical signs that you could be looking for or be listening for if your friends or family happen to be talking about it are a feeling of fatigue, maybe that they might have some sleeping problems, a feeling of ineffectiveness, a talk about having a strong need of being able to control what it is they eat. So that might be something that might be a problem you could see in restaurants rather than people that are making meals by themselves at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then something that is, let's see, I gotta try and look something up real quick.
No problem. One of the things that I remember hearing about was just, especially with like teenagers, with younger, or with like kids that, you wouldn't necessarily like confront directly. Maybe it's not someone you're very close to. Just keep in mind that this is it's a very, very complex disorder. It's psychological, it's, it affects their physicality, it's difficult. So if you are seeing warning signs, and maybe it's not someone you're necessarily close to, please don't do an intervention or anything like that. If it's a classmate, you kind of see them sometimes, or, you're seeing these behaviors, please just be gentle. Don't, use some common sense here and do something a little nuanced.
Look at context.
Exactly.
I mean, there's been plenty of times where me and some of my guy friends make comments that we don't actually mean,
Yeah, certainly.
Things like that.
Certainly.
So pay attention to context.
Or even just, let them know that, like, there are sources available. Maybe if you don't know that person, you can say, by the way, I just learned about some awesome resources on campus. Did you know that these exist? Or like, just, we can't give you advice on how to do this. If you are concerned, meet with people meet with the professionals on campus to learn how to suggest options.
Absolutely. So moving on to sort of, let's see, some more positive notes, things that can be done that has been shown to work with people that have these sorts of problems.
Yes.
One of what we discussed already, the big concerns with what is causing a lot of these sorts of problems is attachment to social media.
Ooh,
sort of looking at what is kind of trendy, looking at what Victoria's Secret models, those catalogs, the Instagram models, whatever it happens to be.
Even the guys. I'm sorry. Have you seen the guy models?
No, I don't look at those pages, actually.
No, not like that. Not like that. But like, sometimes going through social media, you do see guys who are like super thin. They do have the muscles, but if you look, they are super thin. So it affects guys too.
Right. So one of the very effective ways of trying to combat these problems is actually trying to disassociate yourself from these social media outlets. There's been plenty of studies that show that there is definitely a correlation between the two, and when you happen to sort of kind of
recognize a
release
problem?
yourself from those things, that sort of pressure of maintaining what a lot of people see as a normal weight but is actually an unhealthy weight, those seem to go away when that sort of pressure is alleviated from your life.
Definitely. It's great. That is great.
For instance, there's this one modeling agency by, what's her name, Sarah Ziff?
Yes.
Now, what's her actual agency name? Do you happen to know?
I don't know. While you chat, I can look that up. for
Sure,
you.
absolutely. So anyway, this woman, Sarah Ziff, is starting up a modeling agency on her own, doing this for graduate studies at Harvard.
Yes.
Has actually begun to utilize models that are of a healthy BMI body weight. So this is actually in comparison to, I can't think of any other modeling agencies off the top of my head, but I'm sure you guys
Likewise.
have seen all of the ones where they have these extremely frail women that are definitely photoshopped to
Oh yeah.
have a better
Yeah,
appearance than
yeah.
what they actually are. But
Nothing against models, because we have a model on our show. Miss Atifa
We do.
does a lot of modeling. So if you're a model, we're not knocking you.
Right. But this woman is actually starting up a modeling agency that is using women of a healthy weight, and that is actually a very good initiative. That is, the modeling agency is called Alliance, a new model for fashion.
Yes.
So that is a very good cause, very healthy cause, and something that would probably be very extremely beneficial if it expanded beyond its current scope.
I would imagine so. Yes. So, we've kind of been looking at ways to, get away from social media a little bit if you're struggling with body image. This new modeling agency with Sarah Ziff, some awesome research behind that. She's got Harvard research, so it's pretty legitimate. She just saw that, there were a lot of people who had eating disorders, and she wanted her models to line up with more healthy BMIs. Other than that,
Moving on to what I, in my research, found as probably the leading, source of help for people with eating disorders happens to
Perfect.
be finding and catching it at an early age. I mean, if
Perfect.
you think about it, pretty much with everything, like smoking, drinking, any other kind of addiction or problems that people seem to have nowadays, you have the best chance of beating it if you kick these habits at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So programs that have been instituted by the National Eating Disorder.org have conducted many programs that have high success rate in treating disorders when they start at a young age for children, adolescents, and even into the young adult years. They've had much success in programs that have a sort of cognitive dissonance approach to it. So they're specifically teaching kids and young adults about keeping a lookout for whether media, social media, any kind of media that happens to be harmful to health. So
Yes.
they're trying to get people to be aware of these institutions like model agencies or Instagram models that are put up by these modeling agencies that are sort of pushing, maybe not pushing, but they are portraying an image that is unattainable without some detrimental problems coming alongside it.
Exactly.
So these programs that teach people to look out for these sorts of things and to, in a way, eliminate them from their lives
Yes.
have found great success in promoting healthy behaviors or ongoing with these kids and young adults. And that'll do it with this segment. But when we come back after this quick commercial break, we're going to have our Brittany here do a quick interview with Miss Atifa and her experiences with the outpatient clinic that she volunteers. Is it volunteers or works with at?
She used to volunteer.
She used to volunteer there. So stay tuned for that for some very good insight.
get the vibration, won't do you no good. It won't do you no good. And you better start rolling when you hear the man coming. It won't do you no good. It won't do you no good. No, we don't mind if you don't mind. Hell, I'll never mind. Now don't let them all break you. Let the feeling come take you. It won't do you no good. It won't do you no good. And you know I got fever. So when you hit me right, you know you might as well. It won't do you no good. Say it won't do you no good. And I said, kiss your baby goodbye. Come on, love, it's alright. Heaven knows they wanna break you apart. Yeah, kiss your baby goodbye. Come on, love, it's alright. You never know unless you give it a try. Oh, baby. Say, do you know, girl? Can't fight the temptation when you get the vibration. Won't do you no good. Won't do you no good. And you can tell I got fever. You try to shake it off, try it all you want. It won't do you no good. Said it won't do you no good. And I said, kiss your baby goodbye. Come on, love, it's alright. Heaven knows they wanna break you apart. Yeah. Kiss your baby goodbye. Come on now, it's alright. You never know unless you give it a try. Oh, yeah. Love, no, baby.
All right, so now that we're transitioning to the latter half of our show, or rather the last few minutes, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to interview Miss Achifa, our
Hello, everyone.
hello, because she actually worked or volunteered at an eating disorder clinic, so she carries a good amount of wisdom on this topic. So would you mind kind of introducing what position it is that you held there?
Yeah, so I did volunteer there. I was essentially an intern, so I got a chance to shadow the dietitian there. And it was really amazing to see the process of what they went through at the center. So where I volunteered at, where I entered at, it was an outpatient setting. So that means after an eating disorder patient goes through the inpatient, more intensive initial experience, then afterwards they're integrated into outpatient. So that'd be coming, for them, it could be anywhere between once a week to like 3 or 4 times a week to an evening session. And usually it would start out with a session with a psychologist and then possibly the dietitian. So dietitian would try to meet with them once a week or once every other week, depending on where they were at and how long they'd been in long-term care. And then there would always be a meal. So that was part of what I did. So I helped out with like setting up the meal and preparing all the stuff to do with the meal. And then they would also ask me to help with the observations. So what the dietitian would do, and actually all of the professionals that work there, health professionals, they would observe the eating disorder patients. And we would see, to what extent there's comfort with eating, how much food was eaten, how much food was left over, and then that would go into their chart at the end of the night. So I helped out with that. That was a really amazing experience. And I mean, actually, the really cool thing with that was seeing their progress with that too.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you would, get a chance to see that, okay, well, someone wasn't comfortable with this a few weeks ago, and then now they've grown to have that comfort in that area with this food. So that was really cool to see. Not to mention the food was really good.
Awesome.
And then afterwards, the dietitian, for those she didn't get a chance to meet with, if she can squeeze in one more at the end of the night, she would sit down with them. And then part of what I did was shadowing too. So a lot of the sessions I would sit in with her, just kind of like a ghost in the background, like not interrupting, and just observing that interaction and the conversation that happened in the actual counseling session.
Great. Are these meals kind of set up like family meals where you're like sitting with the client, or where the dietitian is like interacting with them, or is it just kind of an observation setting?
Yeah, so the way it would work is that at the beginning of the evening, they would take orders. So everyone would decide as a group where they wanted to eat, and then all of the patients would decide on what they wanted to eat with little bits of recommendation from the dietitian. And then when we actually ate, we did sit all together as a group. So it was really like a relaxed type of setting where we would talk and chat and laugh. Of course, there are certain things where you're like, okay, we know as, like, they know as health professionals, and me as someone that was assisting, there's certain things you don't talk about, but we would really have an enjoyable meal together. So it wasn't like we were just like observing them. It was just like low-key observing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. So one of the things that you mentioned was that with some of these clients, they would come in once a week or 3 or 4 times a week, which kind of makes me think if it's on a weekly thing that it might be a little bit more long-term. Do you see with the outpatient that it tends to be more long-term in people's lives, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so what's really cool is that once someone reaches outpatient, they've made a significant amount of progress. So they're out of the place where it's danger zone. They're not an inpatient anymore. So they're in progress and learning how to deal with the eating disorder on an everyday basis. So for some people, that's shorter term, or just like decreasing the amount of times they're coming every week. But for a lot of times, it's maintenance. So getting a chance to check in, you're like, oh, this week it's been a while. I had a trigger, and getting a chance to talk to that, or talk with the dietitian about that, or the counselor about that. So it is more long term, and more of a maintenance perspective when it's outpatient, which is really interesting too. But
That's great. One of the things that I also like that you touched on was that they meet with a counselor and a dietitian, and that just so much reminds me of like integrative medicine, where it's not just one size fits all. It's kind of like a cocktail of different treatment plans. I just thought that was cool.
yeah, that was something that I didn't really expect going in, because when a lot of people think of eating disorders, they think of, well, food, of course, because that's, the physical thing that they're dealing with. But more so than that is actually the psychological part of it. And even the dietitian, half of what they end up doing is actually psychological related conversations, not just about food itself. So yeah, you're right. It's really that integrative understanding of meeting other health professionals, having a psychologist there, and a dietitian working together.
Definitely. So I know that we've mentioned that this is a pretty serious medical condition, like eating disorders are nothing to play around with. But just as someone who volunteered there, I know you're a student just like myself, so we can't give professional advice or anything, but from the outside looking in, could you see like any kind of advice or any kind of word of wisdom you might want to give someone who thinks that this might be a problem for them? Or
I think one of the biggest things is an awareness of whether or not someone that's around you might be dealing with it, and then being okay with contacting a health professional. So being able to reach out and get some professional help, because that's the most important thing. Even with us, it's out of the scope of our practice being the students. We're not in the practice yet. So I would refer them to a health professional for eating disorders. And then also realizing that it's okay to need help. And it's not like there shouldn't be a stigma attached to it. If someone needs help, then it's amazing that nowadays we do have a lot of avenues to get that help. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for your help on this topic. I know it's something that we see in the newspapers, and like it's something that we're kind of aware of growing up, but it's definitely an honor to get to talk to you about something where you're involved in it and like you're able to, where you worked and volunteered in this area.
Thanks. And actually, there's one other thing I really wanted to get into and mention. I did get a chance, even before volunteering at the center, I used to do modeling. So that's another area that, and I think a lot of people are aware of this too in the entertainment industry, that the perception of how people should look and what they should be doing to look like that is like kind of interwoven throughout the entertainment industry. And I really just wanted to emphasize from my own experience the importance in, at least for me, in feeling confident in who I am. Because I had times before where someone told me I way too much or whatever it is. And really being like, okay, you know what, actually, no, I'm going to be me, be who I am, and going from there. So whether it's in the entertainment industry or actually working in an eating disorder clinic or whatever, or if you just come across someone that you think might have an eating disorder, really being able to understand that this is an issue that happens. This is something that occurs for people, and being aware of that and how to help. But then also for yourself, having confidence in who you are and knowing that you are okay as who you are. Everyone was made unique, and I believe we should honor that.
Absolutely. So just before we close the show, just wanted to give you guys a few helplines or just counseling opportunities or areas to reach out if you think this might be something that you're struggling with, even if you have a shadow of doubt that, maybe this is something. We're students, we're stressed. It happens. So I just wanted to point out this help that we have on campus in Brotman Hall. It's called CAPS, C-A-P-S. It stands for Counseling and Psychological Services in Brotman Hall. That's room 226. Again, that's CAPS in Brotman Hall, room 226. If you are interested, I'm about to give you the phone number, so please listen up. So the number is 562-985-4001. Again, that's 562-985-4001. That's basically just to call the CAPS people there and see if they have any kind of counseling session that you would be interested in. There's group counseling, one-on-one counseling, teaching opportunities. It's a really great opportunity for us as students to just reach out. It's on the CSULB website. Just look up CAPS. It's there. And even if you're not with the school and you're listening outside of Cal State Long Beach, we just wanted to give you some resources. This is the National Eating Disorder Association that I'm about to give you, but that's NEDA, National Eating Disorder Association. But you could always reach their 24-hour helpline at 1-800-931-2237. Again, that's 1-800-931-2237. If you just, you're in a crisis situation and you need someone to reach out to, they are always there to help. So again, we just want to thank you for listening. We know that this was a little bit of a heavy-handed show, but, just as future nutrition professionals, as students, as people in the grind of just daily living, we get stress, we get how these things happen. So we just wanted to introduce this to you guys, let you know about it, give you some resources, and give you some good news on how the field is improving. And once again, we hope you're doing awesome with finals. We hope you're rocking it. And we'll see you again next week.
See you then.
Thanks again for listening to Food-ology Radio.